There is a strange kind of darkness that hides behind good intentions. It wears the mask of kindness, speaks with the voice of reason, and swears it only wants to help. But history shows us, again and again, that this mask often conceals the most dangerous form of blindness, the belief that we can control the forces of nature and human desire. It began, as all tragedies do, with a problem that seemed simple enough to solve. Delhi, early 1900s, cobras everywhere. Their venom killed thousands each year. The British authorities, convinced of their own brilliance, declared a solution. Bring us the dead snakes, and we'll pay you for each one. A perfect plan, on paper. And for a while, it seemed to work. The streets grew quieter. The body count dropped. The officials congratulated themselves. But beneath the silence, something ancient and predictable was stirring. When gold is placed on the head of a serpent, the serpent becomes sacred. Locals began breeding cobras, not to fight the plague, but to feed it. Snakes became currency. Death became a business. And when the rewards stopped, when the British realized the deception, all those captive cobras were set free. Delhi's streets hissed again, only louder this time. The problem had not been solved, it had multiplied, and with it was born a truth so unsettling that it still echoes today. Good intentions are powerless against bad incentives. They call it the Cobra Effect. It's the law of unintended consequence, the paradox that the more you try to fix a problem, the more you feed it. It's what happens when the ego of the planner believes it can outsmart the nature of desire. Lao Tzu wrote, "The more rules and regulations, the poorer people become. The more clever the scheme, the stranger the outcome." 2,000 years later, the prophecy played out exactly as he warned, because the cobra was never the real enemy. The enemy was the illusion of control, the arrogance that believed morality could override self-interest. It's the same delusion that fuels every system that promises to make things better. The British didn't breed cobras, they bred a mirror. And what stared back was not a reptile, but the truth of human nature itself. We follow reward, not reason. We obey profit, not principle. And every time we believe we can outsmart that truth, the serpent waits patiently in the grass, ready to remind us who we really are. Every system of control begins with a promise to make life safer, easier, more predictable. But every promise has a shadow, and the shadow of control is corruption, not of money, but of meaning. The Cobra Effect wasn't just a colonial blunder. It was a glimpse into something far older, a law that governs every human system. When an outcome is measured by reward rather than truth, the reward becomes the only truth that matters. The British believed they were solving a crisis. In reality, they had built a machine that rewarded the very thing it was meant to destroy. Each dead snake was supposed to mean progress. Instead, it meant profit. And profit has no moral compass. It does not ask why, only how much. This is the hidden logic of all misguided rewards. It doesn't punish evil, it subsidizes it. It turns noble intentions into fertile soil for perverse incentives. It transforms virtue into currency. And once virtue becomes a currency, it loses its soul. That is why every ideal, no matter how pure, eventually collapses under the weight of its own reward system. Justice becomes bureaucracy. Compassion becomes charity branding. Education becomes a race for grades instead of wisdom. Religion becomes business. And truth itself becomes something that can be marketed, monetized, and sold. We call it progress, but it's really an elaborate form of self-deception. Because beneath every policy, every company, every ideology, there is one unspoken question guiding human behavior. What do I get out of it? It's not greed, it's not evil. It's the ancient survival code of the ego. The same force that makes a man breed snakes for coins. The same force that convinces us that good intentions are enough, even as we feed the very thing we claim to fight. The British didn't fail because they were cruel. They failed because they were human. And humanity always misjudges the price of its own virtue. We confuse morality with mechanics. We build systems based on what we wish people were, not on what they are. That's why our laws, our governments, our institutions keep repeating the same pattern. They reward appearance instead of essence, effort instead of outcome, image instead of integrity. And yet the truth is painfully simple. People don't become what you tell them to be. They become what you reward them for being. So maybe the real danger isn't evil men doing evil things, but good men creating systems that make evil profitable. History never repeats itself exactly, but human nature does. After Delhi's cobras came the rats of Hanoi, another empire, another grand idea. At the end of the 19th century, French colonizers faced a new plague, rats spreading disease through the city. So they borrowed the same logic, pay people to kill the problem. But this time they didn't want to handle rotting corpses, so they paid per rat tail instead. It sounded clever, efficient, except it wasn't. Soon, the streets were filled with tailless rats running free. People had discovered the loophole. Cut the tail, set the rat free, let it breed again, and keep the income flowing. The bounty program became a factory of self-replicating profit. Every tail sold meant one more rat surviving to reproduce, and once again the plague expanded. The reward had devoured the purpose. The solution had become the disease. A few decades later, the Soviet Union would make the same mistake on an industrial scale. Nails were in short supply. Factories were told, "Produce more nails. You will be rewarded for the quantity you make." And so, they made nails. Tiny, fragile, useless nails. When the government realized the absurdity, they changed the rule. Rewards would now be based on total weight. Factories adapted instantly. Now they made nails so massive and heavy they couldn't even be used. The plan was fulfilled perfectly and completely failed. The system worked, but reality broke. This is the essence of Goodhart's law. When a measure becomes the target, it ceases to be a good measure. Incentives distort the mirror of reality. When you reward the symbol of progress instead of progress itself, you no longer move toward truth. You orbit around illusion. The rat tails, the nails, the cobras, each one a reflection of the same psychological virus. We mistake the number for the meaning. We chase metrics instead of mastery, appearance instead of alignment. And every time we do, the world punishes us with irony. The French thought they were paying for cleanliness. They paid for breeding. The Soviets thought they were paying for productivity. They paid for absurdity. And we, modern humans, think we're paying for growth. But most of the time, we're just feeding another kind of rat. The shape changes, the symbol evolves, but the principle remains. Because the problem isn't the incentive itself, it's the blindness of those who build it. They believe the world runs on reason. It doesn't. It runs on rewards. And every time a system ignores that, the cobra slithers back through history, wearing a new disguise. The most dangerous incentive systems are not outside us. They live within us. The human mind is a marketplace of rewards. Every thought we repeat, every emotion we feed is an unconscious trade. A deal between who we are and who we wish to appear to be. We punish ourselves for disobedience, we reward ourselves for conformity, and we call that personality. You see, the Cobra Effect is not just an economic law. It's a mirror of the psyche. Every time you try to fix yourself through force or guilt, you are the British official paying for dead snakes. You are breeding the very behavior you want to destroy. Try to kill your anger. You make it stronger. Try to suppress your fear. It multiplies in the dark. Try to earn love through sacrifice. You create dependence instead of connection, because the ego doesn't understand balance. It understands transaction. Be good and you'll be loved. Be useful and you'll be safe. Be right and you'll be worthy. These are the private bounties we offer ourselves every day. They sound noble, but they are traps. Each reward is an invisible chain, tying your worth to a condition. And once the reward disappears, so does your peace. This is why most people sabotage their own healing. They turn transformation into performance. They meditate to look spiritual, not to become free. They read philosophy to sound wise, not to live wisely. They help others to prove goodness, not to embody it. The ego rewards appearance, not essence. And like any corrupt system, it rewards what can be seen, counted, and praised. It punishes silence. It fears surrender. It avoids stillness, because stillness cannot be measured. But life is not an accounting system. It doesn't pay by the hour. It rewards presence. It responds to alignment. The moment you act without needing applause, you step out of the economy of illusion. You stop breeding inner cobras. Carl Jung understood this long before modern psychology caught up. He said that the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents. And what are those unlived lives if not the inherited incentive systems, the emotional bounties and punishments passed down like invisible currency? To break free from them is not rebellion. It's awareness. It's the courage to look at your own internal marketplace and ask, who built this economy of desire inside me? Who profits from my guilt? Who earns from my fear? Because until you see that, you will keep chasing approval the same way the villagers chased coin. You will keep breeding the problem, calling it progress and wondering why you feel more empty with every success. The psychology of incentives is not about money. It's about identity. And if you don't design your own, someone else will. A government, a corporation, or the voice in your head pretending to be you. When you zoom out far enough, the world begins to look like a scaled-up version of the human ego. Every nation, every corporation, every ideology, all chasing its own reward, blind to the damage left behind. The cobra is no longer an animal. It's an industry. Look around. Crime, war, sickness, debt, poverty. Each one has become profitable. Each one has evolved from a problem into a business model. Prisons don't profit from rehabilitation. They profit from overcrowding. Pharmaceutical companies don't profit from health. They profit from disease. Banks don't profit when people are free. They profit when people owe. And media, the modern oracle of fear, doesn't profit from truth. It profits from outrage, division, and emotional addiction. Every click is a tale. Every share, another rat breeding in the dark. This is not conspiracy. It's incentive. When money attaches itself to a wound, the wound becomes sacred, and no one in power will ever want it to heal. The system feeds on the same law that governed the cobra hunters. Reward the symbol, ignore the reality. Announce the war on drugs, but make sure the drugs never disappear. Declare the fight against poverty, but make sure dependency always remains. Build endless charities for the homeless, but never ask why homes became a luxury in the first place. We call this the industrial complex, a vast self-replicating organism built to sustain its own hunger. Each part believes it is helping, yet the collective feeds the disease it claims to cure. The truth is uncomfortable. Our civilization depends on the continuation of its own suffering. If peace suddenly broke out tomorrow, the economy would collapse. If everyone became healthy, half of the Fortune 500 would vanish. If people stopped hating each other, the media would starve. And so, like the British breeding cobras, we breed conflict, fear, and need, because we've attached reward to their existence. This is why every election feels like déjà vu, why every revolution grows into the very monster it swore to destroy, why every movement ends up selling the very thing it once opposed, because once you monetize a virtue, you murder it. The fire that once sought to heal becomes the fuel that sustains the disease. Carl Jung said, if you cannot understand why someone did something, look at the consequences and infer the motivation. So look at the consequences. Billions in profit for endless wars. Millions addicted, indebted, divided. Entire generations conditioned to mistake comfort for freedom and noise for truth. The industrial complex is not a place. It's a reflection, a mirror held up to the collective mind of mankind. And until we change the psychology behind it, we will keep worshipping the very cobras that poison us. If the disease of civilization is misaligned incentive, then consciousness is the cure. But consciousness cannot be legislated. It cannot be enforced or purchased or measured. It grows quietly, inside the individual who chooses to see. For every empire that collapsed under greed, there were always small pockets of wisdom that refused to die. Ordinary people, guided not by profit but by principle, not by fear but by awareness. In the 1970s, Oregon faced a crisis of waste. Mountains of bottles and cans buried the landscape, symbols of a society addicted to convenience. Instead of moralizing or punishing, the state tried something different. They made people part of the solution, a 5 or 10 cent deposit on every drink. You pay it up front, and get it back when you return the container. Simple, elegant. A small human-scale reward that aligned interest with responsibility. Suddenly litter disappeared. Return rates soared above 80%. The land became cleaner, not through guilt or force, but through design, through an incentive that respected both human nature and the planet. That is what alignment looks like, when reward and purpose become one, when the system doesn't need manipulation, only understanding. You can't build a healthy society on punishment. You can only build it on participation. When people have skin in the game, they protect what they help create. A farmer guards his soil. An artist protects her craft. A citizen defends the culture that values their voice. But awareness is not just about fixing systems. It's about perceiving their hidden logic before it corrupts you, because the same perverse incentives that shape economies also shape emotions. They whisper in your mind, do this to be accepted, say that to be admired, pretend long enough, and you'll become worthy. But worthiness cannot be earned, it can only be remembered. And that remembrance begins when you stop chasing rewards and start aligning with truth. Culture is the invisible architecture of the collective soul. It defines what is sacred, what is shameful, what is rewarded. When culture honors awareness, people act with integrity even when no one is watching. When culture worships performance, people act righteous only when someone is paying attention. That's why founders speak of values more than profit, why visionaries protect purpose more than reputation, because a culture of awareness turns human nature from a liability into a strength. It channels our self-interest toward harmony instead of chaos. Conscious design doesn't deny desire, it refines it. It teaches us to reward what is real, to measure what matters, to build systems that serve life, not just numbers. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us that the only sustainable reward is the peace that comes from alignment. The Cobra never left Delhi. It simply changed its form. It moved from the streets into the systems, from the systems into the mind, and from the mind into the soul. It became the voice that whispers, if you do this, you'll be safe. If you prove yourself, you'll be loved. If you win enough battles, you'll finally be free. And so we spend our lives hunting serpents that only exist because we feed them. We punish ourselves for failing our own impossible standards. We reward ourselves for wearing masks, and we call that survival. But survival without awareness is just another form of slavery. A cage built from good intentions and bad incentives. The truth is, no one can destroy the Cobra, because the Cobra is not the enemy. It is energy, neutral, ancient, raw. The same power that poisons can also heal depending on how it is used. In myth, the serpent has always guarded wisdom. It tempted Eve, yet also coiled around the staff of Hermes. It symbolized both deception and awakening, poison and antidote, hell and transcendence. The difference between the two is consciousness. Without it, the serpent bites. With it, the serpent becomes medicine. When you act without awareness, you build a world of invisible bounties, a society addicted to its own self-destruction. But when you awaken, you withdraw your energy from the illusion. You stop feeding the problem. You stop breeding the snakes. You begin to see that morality without understanding is just control, and control without consciousness is just fear disguised as order. The British thought they were saving a city. They were feeding a symbol. We think we are saving ourselves, but often we're doing the same. Every time you chase validation, you turn your soul into currency. Every time you cling to certainty, you imprison the infinite. Every time you measure your worth in applause, you hang another bounty sign on your spirit. Freedom begins when you see the pattern, when you realize the Cobra was never out there. It was coiled within you, waiting to be seen. You don't kill it, you face it, you learn from it. And through that encounter, the poison becomes wisdom. That is the secret of alchemy, to turn corruption into clarity, incentive into insight, and reaction into revelation. So the next time you feel the impulse to fix the world, pause. Look inward, ask yourself, am I solving the problem or feeding it? Because awareness is not passive. It's the most radical act of resistance there is. It's what transforms the hunter into the healer, the planner into the philosopher, the blind good intention into illuminated action. And perhaps when enough of us awaken to that truth, the world won't need more rules, or more punishments, or more cobras to kill. It will simply need more eyes to see. If you found meaning in these words, if you feel called to explore the hidden mechanics of the human mind and spirit, subscribe and remember, the truth doesn't shout, it waits for those who are ready to see.